Game Day on Gamecock Central Radio. Welcome in Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell, getting ready for South Carolina and Texas A&M. Wes, we got a 3:30 kickoff today. It'll be on the SEC Network, and I like this matchup, Wes. You know, I know that the Gamecocks have not beaten A&M. It's the fifth meeting ever between the two schools. Carolina's 0-4 against the Aggies. But I like the fact that it's a relatively new opponent. It's somebody that we're not used to seeing historically. And I like the fact that Carolina plays A&M. Even though the Gamecocks haven't found a way to beat them yet, I think it's a good matchup.
Yeah, and I think you look, the last two seasons, you know, I think most people would sort of give it to A&M that they're the most talented team, at least especially on paper, that they've had more talent than South Carolina. But, you know, the Gamecocks have found a way to hang around, you know, in both of these games. I think last year, or 2 years ago, the last time they were at Williams-Brice Stadium, A&M won 24-13, but, you know, I distinctly remember South Carolina was about to get the football back in the fourth quarter, forced a punt, was going to get the ball back down just 8, and had the punt returner muffed the punt, and A&M recovered, and they kicked the field goal to make an 11-point final. And then last year, South Carolina goes to College Station. I don't remember a soul giving them really any chance to go win that game, and then lo and behold, they're winning 17-7 in the second half, and had every opportunity to knock them off at their place. So on paper, you know, I think you'd maybe give A&M at least a touchdown edge if you were handicapping this thing, maybe even more, frankly. But, you know, you look, and South Carolina's played them close, and A&M has played some really good teams close, but then at the same time, They played Arkansas close too, and Arkansas is not a very good football team. So I don't know how much we quite know about this A&M squad yet. We know they have some talent, but you know, if South Carolina has some things go its way, this could just be another fourth quarter type game with whoever can make a few plays late going to, you know, and winning it.
Plenty to talk about for South Carolina, Texas A&M today here on Gamecock Central Radio. And Wes, we're going to get into all of it. The running game obviously will be key today for both teams, particularly when A&M has the football. I think that's the top story from a schematic standpoint or an X's and O's standpoint, so we're going to get into that. But I wanted to talk about the Gamecock quarterback situation with you first. A&M's 4-2 overall, 2-1 in the league, a couple of non-conference wins around losses to Clemson and Alabama, and they've won their last two over Arkansas, and last Saturday over 13th-ranked Kentucky, 20-14 in overtime. So A&M's into the polls. They're number 22 in the country this week. Gamecocks coming in 3-2, 2-2 in the league. Wins over Coastal Carolina, Vanderbilt, Missouri, losses to Georgia and Kentucky. And, Wes, that Missouri game last week was something else. I think, like a lot of Gamecock fans, I've spent much of the week trying to wrap my brain around all the crazy things that happened in that game with the pouring rain in the second half and the lightning delay and the way the Gamecocks were able to come back. You know, the pick six that Carolina got was such a huge play, and it was in the driving rain, and the student section was going crazy when Green got in there and celebrated the touchdown. And it was just a really fun win for South Carolina. And what a day for Michael Scarnecchia, a senior, fifth-year guy that's waited, Wes, you know, his whole career, he never got a start. He finally got in there, and he led the game-winning fourth-quarter drive. He threw 3 touchdown passes with no picks. He played a fantastic game, and the Gamecocks won, man. Just very happy for him.
Yeah, it was an all-around just weird football game. I think that game is sort of the perfect example of you can plan all you want, and you can, you know, put in the response to any scenario you can dream up. You know, this is what we're going to do if this happens. This is what we're going to do if that happens. And then sometimes it just all gets thrown out the window. You know, I don't know if you watched the SEC film thing on SEC Network this week that had Will Muschamp mic'd up, but they had a little clip on there where, and I don't know at what point in the week he was looking at it, but Muschamp was like, weather report, 90 degrees and clear on Saturday. And then, boom, you know, this storm just pops up. And, you know, I was talking to people that were on Garner's Ferry Road, like, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Columbia, that's like 3 exits up from the exit for the stadium, and it's perfectly clear weather outside, and there's a monsoon at the stadium that just, and if you even looked at the radar, it was this tiny little blip, and it was just over Williams-Brice, it felt like, and you were like, well, that's going to break up in about 5 or 10 minutes of real time, not game time, and then the thing just settled in and kept getting bigger and stronger, and I'm like, what is happening? So no matter how much planning you do, you just got to, that's one of Muschamp's mottos, I think, with his program is you got to just keep playing, so what, now what, and this team just sort of kept fighting. They had to go through 2 lightning delays, and it was such a weird game on so many levels. You had really both special teams gave up what you would really call turnovers. They aren't technically turnovers, but invisible turnovers where both teams had a punter, drop a ball that led to the other team getting the football in great field position. South Carolina had a punt blocked as well. Missouri had a, quote, surprise onside kick that the coach tried to say was not a surprise onside kick, but I'm 98% sure was a surprise onside kick that didn't go their way. So both special teams sort of gave 2 invisible turnovers, and then a pick six, the driving rain, 2 game-winning field goals, a backup quarterback. It was just it was madness, and at the end of the day, South Carolina somehow ended up on the winning side of it.
What a day at Williams-Brice. So, Wes, the Gamecocks got to be feeling good. I think there's a warm feeling around the program this week because of that Missouri win. And obviously, that's not going to help them this Saturday against Texas A&M. It's not going to help them slow down Travion Williams or Kellen Mond, but there's definitely a good feeling around the program after this win. And A&M's coming in hot too, Wes. They struggled 2 weeks ago against Arkansas in a surprise that, Arkansas stayed within 7 points of them in College Station, but they came back the following week, last Saturday, and beat 13th-ranked Kentucky and really just out-physicaled Kentucky. The game went to overtime. Kentucky scored in the fourth quarter. They got a fumble return for a touchdown to help put that game at OT, but Kentucky's offense did next to nothing in that game, and A&M played a very physical brand of football against them.
Yeah, you look, Kentucky had virtually no snaps in A&M territory for most of that game, and that's a Kentucky team that really, frankly, was able to out-physical South Carolina at times and was able to control that football game clearly with some help from some turnovers early in that game as well. So, that's not a great sign that they were able to do that if you're a South Carolina fan. But the other side of that is that every game stands on its own merit. I think you look, though, at what Missouri was able to do in the running game this past week against South Carolina, all the explosive plays, and you look at what Kellen Mond and that bunch are able to do in the running game. But then the other side, the fact South Carolina really didn't have a whole lot of running room itself against Missouri, and the fact that this A&M defense is one of the best in the country against the run. All those things are matchup factors that really don't point into South Carolina's favor. Now a little different scheme from A&M. I don't think they rely on tempo quite like Missouri does. South Carolina has shown it can stop the run in spurts. Is the interesting thing. They were bad against Kentucky in the first half against the run, and they were surprisingly good in the second half against Kentucky against the run. So you never quite know how these things are going to actually play out in real life, but on paper, those are the 2 things. The running game on both sides that South Carolina is going to need to play better comparatively to last week if they're going to go win this football game.
All right, let's start there, Wes, with the Texas A&M running game. Williams is the top rusher in the SEC now that A&M's defense really kind of slammed the door on Benny Snell of Kentucky last week. So Williams is the top rusher in the conference right now, 138 yards against the Wildcats. And Wes, the Gamecocks are averaging giving up about 196 yards a game on the ground. And obviously, in terms of breaking down the matchup, you have to start there, Wes. What is Carolina going to be able to do to begin to think about slowing down the run?
Yeah, well, I think the scary part is that I think some of their issues in stopping the run, Emerson, have been at all 3 levels of the defense, D-line, linebacker, and in the secondary. I think at times you start with the defensive line. If they're allowing those offensive linemen to get to the second level to their linebackers, then, frankly, they're not doing their jobs. At times you have a defensive lineman who is able to get into the backfield and sort of knife in there and potentially create a negative play, but then there's a missed tackle on the other side of it. Linebacker play, I think, frankly, has to get better all the way around. Then you look at the secondary. Whenever you have these very long explosive runs, not just an intermediate type run, when you have a true, 50-yard run, 60-yard run. Missouri had 2 very, very long runs in that game. That most of the time to me means that somebody in the secondary probably took a bad angle and wasn't able to or missed a tackle and wasn't able to get your last line of defense was not able to get the ball carrier to the ground or slow him up enough for help to get there. So to me, the thing is there's issues on all three levels. Now, like I said, positive of that is that they've shown in flashes that they can stop the run. And, A&M's a team that, to me, is very, very hit or miss as well. You look at them, they'll come up with big plays. They'll come up with explosive plays, both in the passing game and in the running game. But they also will go through stretches where they're very inconsistent, where they shoot themselves in the foot, they go backwards, they drop the football. So it's really, to me, a story of, Mond and Williams are very, very good talents, but from an execution standpoint, you're talking about an A&M offense and a Carolina defense that have both been, I think, pretty inconsistent this year.
A&M opened as a 2-point favorite, and the line is held at about 2.5 all week. It's a 2.5-point line right now. A&M the favorite. Wes, how much of the Gamecocks' problem stopping the run this year can be attributed to the fact that they don't have DJ Wanham? If Wanham is healthy, when he returns, presumably after the bye week, that's going to allow Bryson Allen Williams to play more linebacker, and that's got to help the Gamecock defense. Talk about that whole situation.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where you don't want to make an excuse for them, because clearly there's more issues than that, but also clearly they missed DJ Wanham a great deal. I mean, you're talking about both in run defense and pass rush. You were talking about having the ability to have Wanham on one side setting the edge as sort of that buck defensive end spot, and Bryson Allen Williams on the other side as that strong side linebacker, sort of setting the edge for South Carolina. So you lose that ability, and I think that's hurt them a great deal, because you're not talking about a defense that has the depth to withstand losses to their best players. I think, long term, when you're building a program, you'd hope that you could build up enough depth to where losing a guy isn't as big of a hit as it really should be. But I think with where South Carolina is right now, losing Wanham has certainly hurt them. And you look at the way some of these teams have been able to sort of get to the outside and run these stretch plays to the outside. The edge either doesn't get set or a guy shoots inside instead of outside and allows a back to bounce it outside. Wanham, not only a very good player just talent-wise, physical-wise, but he's also one of the sharpest minds on the team, one of the sharpest football minds on the team as well. So I think having that on the field is something that you really, really have lacked ever since the Coastal Carolina game. So certainly the other players are going to have to step up in the meantime, but they'll love having number 8 back out there whenever that happens.
Injury still a bit of a problem for the Gamecocks. Wes, JT eBay, the Rice transfer, who's started at safety much of the year, out again this week, and we may see more of Nick Harvey, the A&M transfer, today.
Yeah, it could be more Nick Harvey, but I think Jamias Williams will get the start again at safety. I thought he was all over the field last week. Played well, had an interception. Of course, Stephen Montack will be your other starter at safety, but another interesting storyline there with Nick Harvey. He came in. I don't think he's played probably as much as he thought that he would. He started out camp as a cornerback, was working with the ones, and then had to slide to safety for really for need for the team. They needed guys to step up at safety, and right now he's one of their top backups at safety. And I thought it was interesting that Will Muschamp was asked this week if they had gotten any knowledge from Harvey, like scouting reports, and he said no, he hadn't even talked to him because he didn't want to put Nick Harvey in that position. So I thought that was kind of an interesting exchange during the press conference.
Wes, we had a podcast with Mark Passwaters from AggieYell.com, our Rivals Network partner. We're going to hear from Mark later in the podcast today, get a look at the Texas A&M perspective on today's Game Day podcast. But Mark said that Kellen Mond, the A&M quarterback, got off to a terrific start, and then he may have lost a little bit of confidence, particularly in that loss to Alabama. But he played a pretty good game last week, and he's much improved over last year. So, with the 2 straight wins for A&M, Mond may be starting to get his groove back on here, and it obviously helps when you got a running back like Travion Williams.
Yeah, it does help. And, this is a kid that I think you look at him, though, and big play ability is always there. And that's kind of a situation where when I look at their offense, they can go through, like I said, stretches where they don't do much. And you really maybe think your defense is playing great, think that you're going to lock them down, and then Mond gets outside the pocket and he throws the ball up to one of these big play receivers, and they go up and get it. And next thing you know, they've scored on 3 plays and 80 yards. So I think you look at the ability there of Texas A&M with Mond to just find plays out of nowhere, and it's dangerous. He's an explosive player. I don't know if he's necessarily the shiftiest quarterback in the world, but he's very, very explosive. He gets to top speed very quickly. He covers a lot of ground, and they're dangerous, man. Now in the passing game, I do see him miss some easy throws from time to time. Now he can make big throws on you too. He'll throw the ball back across his body at times. He's not scared to sort of try for a big play. He can be a gunslinger at times, but then you also look some of the underneath stuff where you kind of hope your quarterback can put it on the money and let his receiver keep running. He'll miss some of those touch throws underneath. So I think a key, we all know when South Carolina's winning games, a big reason is because they're getting turnovers. So if South Carolina's going to win this game, whenever Mond does put the ball in danger, because he will do it from time to time, they got to find a way to get the football back on the garnet and black side.
Mond is mobile, Wes, and he hurt the Gamecocks last year with his ability to run. And one defensive player for the Gamecocks that we know A&M is going to have to account for is Javon Kinlaw. So, I think the consensus is that A&M is probably going to move the pocket a little bit today and get Mond rolling out some to keep him away from Javon Kinlaw.
Yeah, and, I think that'll be an interesting cat-and-mouse game as far as how they try to protect and how South Carolina tries to attack. I think you're going to need those front 4 guys, like I said earlier, to find a way to get pressure. But you can't get out of your lanes either. I think he's a guy that if you blitz him too much, then he's going to find a way to get you. You look at his sort of advanced analytics from Pro Football Focus. He's actually hurt teams a pretty good bit when they've tried to blitz him, and that's because a lot of times you lose contain, or if he's able to break from the pocket and buy time, you're leaving your defenders on islands on the outside in man coverage. So it allows for possible big plays down the field. So I think, Javon Kinlaw, your Aaron Sterlings, your Bryce Allen Williams, those guys that when they do get one-on-one protection, they're going to have to find a way to get pressure on Mond themselves without South Carolina having to bring, extra linebackers blitzing.
Wes, the coaching chess match today should be interesting as well, with Muschamp and Fisher having worked together at both Auburn and LSU. They know each other very well, and Muschamp's known as a defensive mind, and Fisher is obviously an offensive-minded coach, and it'll be an interesting matchup just to see what they do to counter one another. And more to that end, Wes, it seems like the Gamecocks have been pretty good with halftime adjustments this year. The third quarter of the Georgia game, the Gamecocks got run over. There's no doubt about that. But with that lone exception, Gamecock defenses look pretty good in the second half all year, and Gamecocks are playing good defense on third down this year as well. So Carolina hadn't stopped the run at all, but they're not doing everything wrong. They're doing some good things on defense.
Yeah, they are. And I think, you look at Fisher and Muschamp, and not only were they together at LSU, but they've, I believe, remained very close friends. I think they have a beach house together in Florida. Obviously, they saw each other every year there for a stretch when Muschamp was at Florida and Jimbo was at Florida State. They've remained in touch, and they know each other's roots. They know, Muschamp knows why Jimbo's scheme is built the way it is, and Jimbo probably knows how to attack the ins and out of Muschamp's scheme as well. So, a lot of times in these games, you can't get away from what you do. So Jimbo and his offense, they're going to do what they do. South Carolina and Muschamp's defense, they're going to do what they do. So you can't do a whole lot completely different. You can't reinvent the wheel, because then you're just going to put your players in a spot to not execute. But will there be adjustments? Which guy can sort of maybe tweak something here or there to give an advantage? And, how does that actually play out in the game, I think is a very, very interesting talking point and storyline, because these guys really do know each other well, and, I think are very close friends. And like you said, South Carolina's adjusted at halftime. They've done a good job of that for most of the year. They were much better defensively against Kentucky in the second half. They were much better defensively against Missouri in the second half. So they'll clearly need to be that again this week. But I think that gives you some confidence as a program. When you go into halftime, if you're down, if things haven't gone your way, you have that little bit of extra confidence to say, okay, we've been here before, but we know we can clean things up.
Wes, on the other side of things, the Gamecocks have shown a commitment to run the football against Missouri. 47 totes in that ball game and only 2.7 yards a clip. But they were committed to run so that they didn't become one-dimensional, and they were obviously trying to take some pressure off of Michael Scarnecchia, who was making his first start. So A&M's run defense has been fantastic this year. Bentley back in the starting role at quarterback for the Gamecocks. And what do you think is going through Jake's mind this week, Wes? Having seen Scarnecchia do what he did, obviously he's happy the team won, but it feels like the pressure has ratcheted up even more now on Jake Bentley.
Well, I think he's clearly going to have to respond to that. And you look at the quarterback position, I don't know if there's truly any competition there, really going back to Jake Bentley's freshman year. There was a big competition there with 3 guys in the mix, and Jake eventually took over, as we know, in the UMass game, and was the guy from that moment forward. But, you look at last season and certainly this season, it was really always Jake Bentley's job to lose, and there hasn't been a lot of pressure. So now you see Michael Scarnecchia go out there and show he can do it, and show, that physically there may not be as much difference between these 2 guys as we thought there was otherwise. And yeah, it does bring you bring a little more pressure to the table, but also I think, competition breeds success. So whenever you have 2 guys competing for a position, whenever you have 2 guys that can go win, does it make it a little more interesting in the quarterback room? Probably so, but at the same time, does it make your football team a better football team? Absolutely. And now if Jake Bentley, for whatever reason, gets banged up again or isn't having a great game, the Scarnecchia option is always there for this coaching staff now.
Let's take a look at the rest of the SEC schedule today. Noon kickoff for Florida and Vanderbilt on ESPN. Also a noon kick for Tennessee Auburn on the SEC Network. 3:30 kick for Georgia LSU. That's the CBS game this week. Gamecocks and Aggies 3:30 on the SEC Network. Missouri is at Alabama 7 o'clock on ESPN. And it's Ole Miss at Arkansas, 7:30 kickoff, SEC Network. Wes, A&M's got 11 sacks in the last 2 games, and what they've done is they have stifled opponents' running games, and they have proceeded to pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. If the Gamecocks are not able to run the football tonight, it seems like Jake Bentley is being put in a difficult spot. And on paper, Wes, this game screams Texas A&M to me.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I think if you're South Carolina, like we said, you kind of have to find a way, I think, to pass to run. A lot of times you talk about running the football to set up the pass, but I think you're going to have to throw on first down. You're going to have to stretch the field vertically. I think that this is a team that you look at those sack numbers, and a big part of that is they've been so good against the run that then you turn right back around and, you put yourself in a 2nd and long, then a 3rd and long, and then they just pin their ears back and go get you. So you got to stay out of those situations. You got to live to fight another drive sometimes. So I think finding a way to stretch the field vertically and force A&M to defend the pass on first downs, because they have been a bit susceptible to the passing game. From what Mark Passwaters had said, looking at them this year, that's sort of been the area where their defense has been vulnerable. So I think that you look at that, and it goes right back to who we're talking about, though. Jake Bentley, there's a little more pressure on him, but I think Jake Bentley and his receivers, the receivers got to help out. They got to go have a big game. I think this could be a big week for a Shi Smith, possibly matched up there in the slot. They have a similar approach to defense to what Vanderbilt did. We saw what Shi did there. Shi had one of the biggest catches of his freshman season last year at A&M, a touchdown from Jake Bentley. So, I think a guy like Shi Smith could possibly have a big game this week.
With the exception of Alabama put 45 on A&M, and Tua had a huge game, and we all know what Alabama's capable of. But when teams have hurt the Texas A&M defense this year, they've done it with big plays, passing downfield, vertical passing game. The secondary, if there is a weakness on the A&M defense, that's got to be it. They've given up some big plays in the passing game. And when you can give your quarterback time, Wes, that's going to set you up to give you chances to do that. And Gamecock pass protection has been very good this year. It's been improved, so that gives you reason to believe that maybe the Gamecocks will be able to find some passing lanes downfield. And I think we're going to find out a lot about Jake Bentley today, Wes. I think this is a challenge for him today. I think the experience of missing a start for the first time, he started 24 straight games. So we're in the third year with Bentley as a starter, and I just think we're going to find out exactly what Jake Bentley's made of today. I think this is his test. I think if he responds and plays well, this team can have success the rest of the year. And if he doesn't, I'm not sure that we won't see Scarnecchia again this year.
Well, yeah, I think you certainly, if you're Jake Bentley, you want to, not that you pay attention to any of the naysayers, but, the talk this week from the fan base has been pretty strong about a portion wanting to see Scarnecchia again. And, I think we have to remember that was one football game against a pass defense that also has struggled this year. So, and Scarnecchia was great, considering the position he was put in.
Yep.
But I think we also have to sort of put the entire thing in perspective as well. So, but like you said, huge game for Jake Bentley. It's an opportunity for Jake Bentley, but also you don't want to see Jake Bentley go out there and struggle early on, and then the staff have to be in the position of having to make that decision mid-game. But the other side of that is Jake Bentley has a chance to go out there, possibly beat a top 25 team to silence some of the naysayers. And, if he goes out and can spread the football around early on, then that's going to be what helps South Carolina turn right back around and have every opportunity to run the football.
Gamecock Central's Game Day podcast, Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell. Glad to have you along. We still got Collyn Taylor, our staff writer, coming up. We're going to hear from Mark Passwaters as well. He's with AggieYell.com, our Rivals Network partner. We're going to get keys to victory from both of them. And we're going to take a call on the Gamecock Central hotline today. We got a call from a listener in Florida, big Gamecock fan down there, has a question for Wes, so we're going to listen to that call, and we're going to let Wes answer that question. And we would encourage you to get involved with our Game Day podcast, the Gamecock Central hotline, open for you 24/7. The number's 803-497-9058, 497-9058. Call that number anytime, 24 hours a day. Leave us a voicemail, questions, comments, feedback. We welcome you to call the Gamecock Central hotline, and Wes will answer your question on next week's Game Day podcast. No game next week, obviously bye week coming up, but we will return in 2 weeks with the Game Day podcast. Let's go ahead and go to the Gamecock Central hotline. Tyler from Florida wants to talk to Wes.
Hi, this is Tyler Rice down in Lakeland, Florida. Love the podcast. My question today is, do you believe that this Texas A&M game is a bit of a measuring stick or a defining game as far as part of the Gamecock season this year? Because if the Gamecocks don't win this Saturday, I think it's reasonable to say that we could potentially lose to Clemson as well. And at the end of it all, that will mean that in 3 years, Will Muschamp has not beaten Georgia, has not beaten Clemson, has not beaten Texas A&M, and has not beaten Kentucky. That's all of our rivals and a basketball school. Love the podcast. Love hearing other Gamecocks talk about it all. And have a good one.
Hey, Tyler, we appreciate the kind words. We thank you for calling in on the Gamecock Central hotline. Wes?
Yeah, and I think, to Tyler's point there, this is a very key game for South Carolina because it could potentially swing the expectations back up to probably the number a lot of people had in their head preseason. I think early on, a lot of people were thinking, 9 wins during the regular season, possibly 10, I think, optimistically. But the way the season has started, 2-2 to start the year, now 3-2 with the win over Missouri, the expectations got shifted a little bit. And, I think to his point, every game is probably a swing game. Bye week next week, clearly, but then Tennessee after that. Tennessee's a team South Carolina will be favored over, but you never can assume a South Carolina win over Tennessee either, frankly. So I think every game is sort of a swing game moving forward. But certainly, if South Carolina wins this, you're 4-2 going into the bye. You're riding high. You get a bunch of guys back healthy after the bye week. A Tennessee team coming into town, as I said, Carolina will be favored against, and you got a real shot at being 5-2. So I think you look at all those things and you say that the season, the season, to his point, the season could really turn as far as what South Carolina has got a chance to accomplish if they can find a way to beat the Aggies.
3:30 kick today, South Carolina, Texas A&M. Tyler, thanks again for calling the Gamecock Central hotline. That number again, 803-497-9058. Give us a call. Get involved with the Gamecock Central Game Day podcast. Wes, huge recruiting weekend for the Gamecocks, and I heard you on 107.5 The Game in Columbia. That's the flagship station of the Gamecock Radio Network, talking about some of the recruits that will be on campus for the game today, and scheduled to visit is 5-star running back Quavaris Crouch from Charlotte. Wes, I wanted to hear you talk about him, and apparently Deion Sanders' son is supposed to be in town too?
Yeah, that's true. Quavaris Crouch, and Primetime's kid will be in town, or scheduled to be in town, I should say.
Right.
Crouch was actually expected for the Georgia game, South Carolina-Georgia game, and had to cancel last minute and didn't make it in. So that'll be a guy that we're tracking to see if he makes it in, but he is on the expected visitors list we put together and put on Gamecock Central each week, each home game. He's on there, so that'll be a guy to track. And then, Shiloh Sanders, who actually lives in Texas, is Primetime's kid. Exchanged some messages with him on Thursday. He confirmed that he will be in Columbia, that this is an official visit. South Carolina offered him late last week. He is at a powerhouse school, I think. They're undefeated. He actually didn't play a whole lot last year, but has had a big senior year and has really popped up on the radar late. Florida State, obviously where Deion Sanders played, has offered him now as well. So he's seen some big offers roll in really in the last, half of a month or so.
Well, Deion Sanders is one of the best players in the history of the sport, and if his son is anything like him, he's got a bright future, Wes.
I haven't seen the kid play, obviously, but, if he's got Deion Sanders' DNA, then it's worth a shot, right?
Yeah, he's starting ahead of the game, that's for sure. All right, Wes, I wanted to ask you about Ryan Helinski as well. Gamecock commit scheduled to enroll early. He's due to be in Columbia in early January, but he got an offer from Stanford. This is a young man from California. A very interesting story and what seems like a fantastic kid, and I know you've gotten to know him throughout the last couple of years. So talk about the situation with Helinski. Wes, no reason at all to believe that Helinski may entertain this offer, but Stanford obviously a very prestigious school, and just to get an offer from them is a feather in the cap of anyone.
Yeah, I think that's an honor to get an offer from Stanford.
Certainly.
It says something about you, not just as a player, but as a student and as a person. And, they don't send out offers just to send out offers. It's a big process about whether you can get in there as well. And the admissions process at Stanford is crazy. So, just for him to get that offer is a great honor for Ryan. It says something about him. He's been very consistent in saying throughout the process that he's firmly committed to South Carolina. It's almost mid-October now, so he'll be graduating in December and enrolling the first week of January at South Carolina. So that's not far away at all, and this is a pretty late offer. I think if Stanford would have offered, a year ago, then I would think this would be pretty tough to turn down. But then you look at the fact that they've already sort of been making plans to get to South Carolina. I want to be clear, I've not spoken with Ryan personally since he got the offer, but he's been pretty clear throughout the process that, South Carolina is where he wants to be.
Wes, do you think Stanford has had some success over the years, maybe coming in and offering, particularly California kids late? I think a lot of kids would covet a scholarship opportunity like that to a school like Stanford, and I'm wondering why they waited so long to offer him, and maybe they're hoping that he might flip at the last minute.
Yeah, I don't know what they were waiting on. That's an interesting question. I think you look at quarterback recruiting, it's always interesting. A lot of times you go get your guy early, and I don't know if they've had some misses on the recruiting trail, or just maybe it's one of these things where they look at him and say, we were wrong early on. This guy's just too good to pass on, potentially. I don't know exactly what they were thinking there, but we've seen other schools come in late for Ryan as well. Not this late, but the Southern Cal offer was pretty late, and I think Southern Cal thought they had a real chance to try and flip him, and he really just never even entertained that. So it's something worth tracking at the very least, but it is kind of odd that they would offer this late.
So Stanford has reached all the way across the country and gotten a couple players from South Carolina in recent years. David Olson, the former quarterback at Irmo High School, played 4 years at Stanford, ultimately transferred to Clemson, but got some time in the NFL. And current Stanford receiver J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is from Dorman. He was the 2014 South Carolina State Player of the Year, the Gatorade Player of the Year. And I had people asking me at that time why Arcega-Whiteside would go all the way across the country, and I said it's Stanford. It's a pretty obvious reason to me. So, and Arcega-Whiteside's having a huge year for Stanford, by the way. If you haven't seen Stanford play, he's having a big year for them, so that's good to see. So it'll be interesting to see if this is an issue at all with Alinsky, but all indications, Wes, from since he made his commitment and really before that, are that Alinsky's a Gamecock, and he'll be here in January.
Yeah, that's been the plan, and he's put in countless hours recruiting others to join him in Columbia as well. So I don't think we should discount that either, how much attention and time he's put into this recruiting class. And he's a leader. He's a kid you want really running your team and program. So I don't think you can either – we've talked about him a ton, but I don't think you can even overstate just what Ryan Alinsky means for this South Carolina program once they can get him to campus.
All right, it's time now for Keys to Victory, and we'll start with the Gamecocks. We'll throw it over to Collyn Taylor, staff writer with Gamecock Central.
So obviously South Carolina has had some trouble stopping the run, and Texas A&M is one of the best rushing attacks in the country, with Travion Williams leading the SEC right now, coming into this weekend in yards. And, stopping him is going to be priority number one, and stopping that rushing attack. Kellen Mond ran all over the defense last year, and if they can slow them down in the rushing game and force Mond to pass, which he's a better passer this year, and South Carolina has a pretty good shot. And offensively, I think you got to come out and you got to be aggressive pretty quickly and try and go up and make Texas A&M a one-dimensional team. Easier said than done, but I think if they do that, then they'll hopefully come out with the win. It'll be close, I think, for a little bit, but I just don't know if that run defense is going to be able to hold up against such a potent attack like what Texas A&M has.
Thank you, Collyn Taylor. That's our staff writer from Gamecock Central. And now for Texas A&M's Keys to Victory, we'll throw it over to Mark Passwaters with AggieYell.com.
Okay, 2 keys for A&M to win Saturday. First, establish the running game. They have done that the last couple of weeks. Travion Williams leads the SEC in rushing. Obviously, Carolina has had a little bit of trouble stopping the run. A&M would like to go out there, establish the running game, control time of possession, and just basically wear South Carolina down the way they did Kentucky last week. On defense, it's very simple. Minimize the damage Jake Bentley and Michael Scarnecchia can do in the passing game, because that's been A&M's problem. They have shut down the run. They've been very good on third down conversion defense, but if they have a problem, they've given up a lot of big plays through the air. That's got to be the concern. If they can keep those to a minimum, then they'll have a very good chance of winning the ballgame.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Passwaters from AggieYell.com, our Rivals Network partner. We had a good podcast with him and the Texas A&M perspective earlier this week. You can check that out here on Gamecock Central Radio. All right, Wes, I got one more item for you before we wrap it up today and get ready for kickoff for the Gamecocks and the Aggies. The governors of South Carolina and Texas play for a trophy. When the Gamecocks and Aggies meet, they have a trophy that the winner, that governor gets the trophy for the year. So for the last 4 years, the Texas governor has had the Bonham Trophy. And I'm wondering have you heard about this, Wes, and do you know anything about James Bonham, the man that is named after?
I had no idea about any of this until I saw it on Twitter this week.
Okay.
I guess Muschamp was asked about it at the SEC teleconference. But, no, and I looked, I was like, this is really I thought I was still asleep when I was like, that I was dreaming. Because, like, I covered the team, and I guess the coach had no idea either. So
right. Well, the schools,
I didn't know what in the world they were talking about.
Okay, well, you're not alone, and that's why I brought it up. The schools don't really have anything to do with it except for the fact that it's the winner of their game that the trophy goes to the governor of that state. So it's just a bet between the governors, and they made a trophy. And James Bonham is a South Carolinian who was born in the Red Bank area. He was born in what is modern-day Saluda County, and he fought at the Alamo. He was killed at the Alamo.
Okay.
And his younger brother was a brigadier general for the Confederacy and later served as governor of South Carolina. And I bring all this up today, Wes, because I live on Bonham Road right off of Rosewood Drive, and I know that my street is named after this guy. And when I heard that this week, I said, well, that makes sense. I'm going to bring that up on the podcast this week. So maybe Henry McMaster will be able to get the James Bonham Trophy in South Carolina for the first time. We're about to find out, Wes. It's going to be a fun matchup today. We appreciate you here on the GC Game Day podcast.
Thanks, man. Let's do it again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, next week, bye week. So enjoy the bye and come back in a couple of weeks and join us for another Gamecock Central Game Day podcast with Wes Mitchell. I'm Emerson Phillips. Thanks for being with us and enjoy the ball game.